A curse that says you'll end up eating your own body, a tomb that threatens to snap your neck like a bird, and a governor so spiteful he made sure your entire family would suffer eternally if you so much as touched his coffin. These are dark ancient curses hidden in pyramids. Alright, so let's talk about Pepi I, one of the pharaohs from Egypt's 6th dynasty. His pyramid is in Saqqara, and while it's not as flashy as some of the bigger ones like Giza, it's got one thing that makes it way more intimidating: a curse. Carved into the walls is this nasty warning to anyone thinking of messing with it. The inscription says the violator will lose their estate, be cursed, and literally eat their own body. Yes, that's the actual quote. And it doesn't stop there. The curse also name drops the gods Horus and Nephthys, calling on them to help bring ruin to the poor idiot who steps out of line. Now, this isn't some vague bad stuff will happen kind of warning, right? This one lays out a full destruction plan. You mess with Pepi's final resting place and you don't just get haunted, you get disowned, cursed, and of course, horrifyingly, you'll just eat yourself, apparently. Now, the reference to eating your own body, it's probably not meant to be taken that literally. It's more like you'll waste away so badly, it's like you're devouring yourself, but still, it's pretty dark. Next is the tomb of Khentika Ikhekhi in Saqqara, and this guy was not playing around either. His curse doesn't bother with subtlety at all, it goes straight for the neck, literally. The warning carved into the wall reads, "As for all men who shall enter this, my tomb impure, I shall seize his neck like a bird." So you show up impure, he's grabbing your throat and snapping it like a goose. Now, impure in ancient Egyptian terms could mean anything from not being ritually cleansed to showing up after doing something sketchy like stealing or lying. Saqqara is packed with tombs like this, and a lot of them have protective texts. According to archaeologists, the colorful hieroglyphs in these tombs weren't just for decoration. These were the ancient Egyptians' versions of security systems designed to scare off tomb robbers. If the gods didn't get you, the dead themselves would. Ankhtifi was a local governor during a pretty chaotic time in Egypt called the First Intermediate Period. He ruled a stretch of land along the Nile and was basically in charge of keeping order while the central government was falling apart. When he died, he was buried in a tomb at El Mu'alla, and let's just say he was not playing around when it came to protecting it. He left behind a curse carved right into the wall, saying, "Any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may Hemen not accept any goods he offers, and may his heir not inherit." What does that mean exactly? Well, basically, if you screw with his coffin, the god Hemen, which in ancient Egypt was like being spiritually blacklisted. And on top of that, your kids would lose the right to inherit anything from you. In ancient terms, getting on the god's bad side meant losing everything. And with no heir, your entire legacy would just vanish. So in their world, legacy was everything. Having your name live on through your kids and getting proper offerings in the afterlife meant peace for eternity. So Ankhtifi's curse made sure that anyone thinking of robbing him knew exactly what they'd lose. So this next one's from the tomb of a guy named Penniut, a high priest and royal scribe who served under Pharaoh Ramses VI during Egypt's 20th dynasty. His tomb was discovered in the ancient site of Aniba in Nubia, which was once part of Egypt's southern territory. Penniut's whole thing was being super loyal to the pharaoh, and apparently he expected the same kind of loyalty and respect after death too, because on his tomb he left behind this threat to anyone who dares mess with it. The curse says, "He shall be miserable and persecuted." Pretty self-explanatory, not very theatrical, but sometimes blunt is just the way to go. No birds getting their necks twisted this time, nothing divine or otherworldly, it's just human suffering. What's also interesting is how personal his tomb is. The inscriptions go on about how devoted he was to Pharaoh and to the temple of Aniba, and there's this undertone of, I did everything right, so just don't screw with me. Right now, we're talking about Thutmose I, one of Egypt's earlier pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, the same line King Tut came from. He ruled around 1506 to 1493 BCE, and he was a big deal. Expanded Egypt's borders, built temples, basically helped set the stage for the empire's golden age. He was originally buried in KV 38 in the Valley of the Kings, but his daughter Hatshepsut later moved him to KV 20, probably to be near her own tomb. Anyway, carved into the walls of his burial site is a curse that also gets straight to the point. he shall have no heir. Again, this was a serious insult back then. Well, serious warning. Losing your bloodline, your legacy, that was worse than death in ancient Egypt. This wasn't just about stopping tomb robbers from grabbing his jewelry. It was a threat to wipe your family off the map for even thinking about disturbing. Egyptians believed strongly in the afterlife. Having no heir meant no one to perform the rituals you needed to make it to the other side. The Egyptians didn't just build pyramids, they also built these flat-roofed tombs called mastabas, and over 160 of them have been found at Saqqara alone. Some are pretty standard burial sites, but a few come with some pretty creepy warnings carved into the walls. These curses were meant to scare off tomb raiders and anyone who dared to enter without permission. According to one professor from the American University in Cairo, some of these inscriptions go after impure persons specifically, calling on the gods to deal with them harshly. And by harshly, we mean by having their neck wrung like a goose, for example. Pretty brutal. Next up, we gotta talk about the most famous tomb curse of them all, King Tut's. His tomb was discovered in the early 1920s in the Valley of the Kings, an ancient Egyptian burial site that goes back to around the 16th century BCE. The find was led by British archaeologist Howard Carter and financed by Lord George Carnarvon. It was a huge deal at the time. It got worldwide attention, but it didn't take long before whispers of a curse started floating around. The curse supposedly said that anyone who disturbed the tomb would die. And then, right on cue, basically, Lord Carnarvon died of BLOOD poisoning not long after stepping inside. And over the next few years, more people connected to the dig started dying suddenly. Arthur Mace, one of the excavators, died from arsenic poisoning in 1928. Richard Bethel, Carter's personal secretary, was found smothered in his bed. Douglas Reed, who helped x-ray the mummy, dropped dead not long after. Even though Howard Carter himself somehow dodged the curse for a while, he would eventually die of Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1939 at the age of 64. Coincidence? Probably. I mean, everybody dies at some point, but when you see that many people drop after messing with the same tomb, definitely does make you think. Let's dig into one of Egypt's grittier curses from a lesser-known pharaoh, Meryibre Khety, who ruled during the chaotic First Intermediate Period around 2160 BCE. Not much is known about him, but his tomb left behind this warning: "He shall be cooked together with the condemned." Pretty grim. A promise that if you mess with his tomb, you'll end up in the same fiery pot as the condemned. Conjures up some pretty classically hellish imagery, right? This one taps into that deep fear of disgrace in death, not just dying, but ending up dishonored and burned along with the worst of the worst. Back then, and to some degree still today, fire also meant total erasure. Here's a pretty unsettling one found in several Old Kingdom tombs. "Cursed be those who disturb the rest of a pharaoh. Death by a disease no doctor can diagnose." Ancient Egyptians knew that disease was scary because it was mysterious and pretty much untreatable back then. So instead of mythical, otherworldly torment, they were talking about the very real terror of sudden, inexplicable illness. I think this is the one that creeps me out the most. I really like it because it hits on that body horror kind of level. It preys on that fear of medical helplessness. There's just no escape from your own decaying body, which is a horrifying thought. And true. Harkhuf was an important guy during Egypt's 6th dynasty. He governed Upper Egypt and led major trading missions to Nubia. His tomb includes a warning for anyone thinking of messing with his final resting place. Carved into the tomb entrance, it says, "As for any man who shall enter into this tomb as his mortuary possession, I will seize him like a wild fowl. He shall be judged by the great God." Now that phrase might not sound all that intense compared to some of the other stuff we've heard on the list, but in ancient Egypt, being seized like a wild fowl and judged by the great God were serious threats. When Harkhuf mentions the great god, he's probably talking about Osiris or Ra, meaning if you messed with his tomb, it wasn't just bad karma, you were basically asking for judgment from the gods themselves. What's cool about this one is also there's a mix of tones. There are inscriptions where he talks himself up earlier on, mentions the good he did, then flips straight into "I'll grab you like a wild bird and let the gods sort you out, and it's not gonna end well for you." With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.